Greetings. The difficulty level of this video is easy. This is yet another book review in our book review series, and somewhat similar to the retrofuturism book review series, I will also review books that are very good in terms of understanding the history of technology. And therefore, the book that we are going to look at today is titled How We Got to Now by Steven Johnson. There's also a PBS documentary built around this book, which many of you have seen, and maybe you just want to watch the PBS documentary instead of the book. But the book has a lot of details and a lot of subplots of technology that are very high quality and will probably be of interest to anyone who is a purist in terms of understanding the subtle subplots of technological disruption and the history therein. So this book is not very long, despite the relative thickness. The font size is pretty big and there's a lot of pictures, and that's good. I mean, it's not so long that you can't necessarily read all of it relatively easily. The book has 6 chapters that each have just one-word titles, and that is part of what I like a lot about the book, is the simplicity of categorization of its topics. The 6 chapters are titled Glass, Cold, Sound, Clean, Time, and Light. Again, glass, cold, sound, clean, time, and light. And the reason he chooses one word is that he talks about the history of how we were able to manufacture glass and use it for a variety of purposes, including fiber optics. How we could harness sound to the extent of recording audio and even creating an entire music industry around it. Cleanliness, how human society got to understand the importance of cleanliness and create products like soap to get rid of a lot of the problems associated with public health in unclean pre-modern societies. Time, how the measurement of time created a worldwide network of transportation, and how train stations had to synchronize around time to even have a train network, because you needed trains that arrive at a time that is correct at the destination point, and when you cross a time zone, if you don't have that type of precision, all kinds of problems arise. And coldness, how human beings in tropical countries could never experience cold, and how we didn't have refrigeration and therefore we couldn't preserve food, and how there were fascinating historical passages when there was an entire industry devoted to cutting blocks of ice out of places in cold areas such as Quebec or New Hampshire and transporting them via ship to the Caribbean, and in some cases all the way to India, and how the ice was insulated and kept from melting over that long ocean voyage. And that sounds very funny, but today we still do a lot of things that are just as illogical. The notion that hydrocarbon fuel should be transported 10,000 miles, which is still being done in the world, is crazy and just as silly as transporting blocks of ice thousands of miles. People in the future will find it odd that there was a period in which hydrocarbon fuel was transported from the Persian Gulf all the way to Houston, Texas, that 15% of the oil was used simply in the transporting and refinement of the oil. And there were all sorts of geopolitical and economic problems associated with that weird practice of transporting hydrocarbon fuel over such a long distance. It's something that people in the future will find just as funny as we find the transportation of ice blocks. Now, despite the brilliant descriptions in this book that Steven Johnson has put forth, he doesn't seem to indicate any awareness of the accelerating rate of change, even though his narration proves to us the accelerating rate of change. He doesn't point it out, though, and that's why anyone watching this channel, I hope you are savvy enough to have internalized the accelerating rate of change as the principle of all technological progress and can see what is between the lines in this book, because the accelerating rate of change is present in all 6 technologies, all 6 chapters that he describes. And while this book does not talk about the future at all, when you see the rate of progress in each of the technologies or paradigms that he describes, then you can see how quickly they are continuing to advance in the future and what we might expect in the future, because he has chronicled the accelerating rate of change across a lot of seemingly unrelated technologies, paradigms, industries, and practices very completely. The publication date of this book was 2014, so it's not really that old of a book either. The world has not advanced that much since the publication date of this book. But this book is a very good resource in terms of seeing how the accelerating rate of change exists in a lot of things above and beyond just computing, and how the secondary and tertiary effects of accelerating rates of change exist. For example, he describes the fascinating process of how Chicago came to be and how the entire city was raised up to a higher level to create a sewage system that did not exist before. Entire city blocks that weighed thousands of tons each were lifted to higher elevations. It was one of the most profound geoengineering feats that has ever occurred. And this was a long, long time ago, over a century ago. And that is something I believe everyone who's interested in technology or who wants to understand the long-term flow of technological change, the mega trends of all technological and economic change, should be aware of. This is basic foundational knowledge and basic historical background for all of the above. So this book, I'm sure, is available on ebook as well. I happen to have the hardcover like I do for a lot of the books that I read pretty often, but I encourage you to pick this up. This is a very good publication, or otherwise see the PBS documentary around this if you can look that up. That is more abbreviated and perhaps oversimplified relative to the book. The book is perhaps for the higher concept thinkers, but I do recommend both in any event. Now, if you like this type of content, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel, and thank you very much for watching.